The buzzing dragged me out of sleep like a hand on my ankle. Not my phone. The screen on the nightstand glowed in the dark, lighting up the edge of the hotel lamp and the rumpled receipt someone had tossed near the ice bucket. Meredith's phone. I knew it because the case was that soft gray silicone with a tiny crack near the charging port, and because it was closer to my side of the bed than hers, like she'd set it down without thinking. One name filled the screen. Grant Yellowheart. It kept buzzing in steady pulses. Not frantic, just persistent. Like whoever it was had a right to keep trying. Meredith moved fast, way faster than someone half asleep. Her arm shot out. She flipped the phone face down so hard it made a dull slap against the wood. Her breathing changed. Not loud, but different. Shallow, careful, like she was holding the air in her chest and trying to decide what kind of person she was going to be in the next 10 seconds. I pushed myself up on an elbow. The room was too warm, the heater doing that dry humming thing, and outside the window the parking lot lights made the snow look blue. "Meredith," I said. My voice came out rough. "Who's Grant?" She didn't answer right away. She stared at the ceiling like it might hand her a cleaner sentence. I waited. I wasn't angry yet. I was just awake. All the way. She turned her head and looked at me. Even in that low light, her eyes had that steady look she always wore in public. The calm one. The edited one. But it had a crack in it now. "My husband," she said. I blinked once. Like that would clear it. "What?" "Legally," she added, like that was supposed to soften the word. "It's not Jake. It's not what it sounds like." I sat up fully. The sheet fell to my waist, and cold air hit my shoulders. I didn't care. My brain had already started doing that EMT thing, searching for facts, checking for what's missing, trying to figure out what's true in a messy room. "You told me you lived alone," I said. "You told me you were separated." "I do live alone." Her voice stayed quiet, controlled. "I am separated. And this is... what, paperwork?" I looked at the phone like it might buzz again and explain itself. "Why is he calling at... what time is it?" Meredith reached for the phone again. Slower now, like she knew any sudden move would spook me. She didn't pick it up. She just rested her fingers on it, keeping it pinned face down. "Because he always calls," she said. "Because it's complicated." For a second, my mind flashed back to where this started. 2 weeks earlier, Station 6 rolled out on a kitchen smoke call in one of those polished Fort Collins neighborhoods where every porch light matches and the sidewalks look swept. Dispatch said possible fire. But when we pulled up, there was no flame showing. Just that sour, burned smell drifting out through an open front door. A kettle had melted on a stove. No active fire. Just a blackened burner and a thin haze in a clean, bright kitchen. Meredith stood barefoot on her porch like she'd been waiting for us. Hair clipped back, sweater sleeves pushed up. Not shaking, not crying. Just embarrassed in a tidy, contained way. Like smoke in her home was a personal failure she needed to fix. When we cleared, she stepped closer. And before I could say anything, she slipped a small paper bag into the pocket of my jacket. "Thank you," she said, like she meant it. Back at the station, I opened it and found homemade chocolates and a folded note. One line in neat handwriting. "For the kind eyes and steady hands." Her number on the back. I called, expecting it to go to voicemail. She answered like she'd been watching the screen. Now I was sitting in room 214, staring at her while the heater hummed and the air smelled faintly like hotel soap and her shampoo. I swung my legs off the bed. The carpet was cold under my feet. "So you're married," I said, more to myself than to her. "And you didn't think that mattered." "It matters," she said quickly. "It matters. I didn't know how to tell you without making you leave before you knew anything else." I laughed once, short and dry, because it was either that or say something worse. "You didn't know how to tell me," I repeated. "So you didn't." Her chin lifted a little. Not defiant. More like bracing. "I wasn't trying to trap you," she said. "I wasn't trying to use you. I like you, Jake." I stood and started pulling on my clothes. Jeans first. Shirt. My hands did it automatically, like gearing up for a call, because my head was loud and my body needed a job. Meredith watched me, eyes following every movement. She didn't reach for me. That almost made it harder. Is he going to show up? I asked. No, she said, and then hesitated, just enough to make the word feel thinner. He won't. He's not like that. I paused with one boot in my hand. Then what is he like? Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. She looked away toward the window, toward the blue snow in the parking lot, like the answer was out there somewhere. That silence landed heavier than anything else she'd said. I tied my laces tight. I grabbed my jacket off the chair. The paper bag from 2 weeks ago wasn't in it, obviously, but it still felt like it was, like a weight sewn into the lining. Meredith sat up, pulling the sheet higher, keeping herself covered and composed, even now, even alone with me, always managing the scene. Jake, she said softer. Please don't just walk out. I stopped with my hand on the door handle. The metal was cold. My reflection in the peephole looked like a stranger. What did you think this was? I asked. A quiet little break from your real life? Her eyes flashed. Hurt, then anger, then something tired. My real life is a mess, she said. And I'm the one cleaning it up. I nodded once because I believed that, and because believing it didn't make it safer for me. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in from the hallway like the building exhaled. Behind me, the phone buzzed again, muffled against the wood, and Meredith's voice tightened when she said, "Don't, please." As I stepped out into the too bright corridor, already deciding I wouldn't answer her messages today, not until my thoughts stopped coming in siren bursts and I could figure out whether I was leaving a woman who'd lied to me or a woman who was still learning how to tell the truth without losing everything she'd built around it, while I walked toward the elevator and the lobby coffee that tasted like cardboard and the kind of morning where you can't tell if the cold is outside or inside you. I rode down College Avenue with my hands stiff on the steering wheel, heater blasting but not doing much. The sky had that washed-out winter look, like the sun didn't want to commit. I kept seeing the phone screen in my head, the little heart next to his name, and the way she flipped it over like it was a hot pan. I should have gone home, showered, slept, reset. Instead, I pulled into a place off Mason that opened early for people who wanted to sit somewhere that wasn't their own kitchen. It wasn't fancy. A long counter, a few booths, TVs that never made eye contact with you. I ordered black coffee and stared at it until it cooled enough to drink without feeling anything. My uniform bag was in the passenger seat. I could have gone straight to station and pretended the night never happened. But I knew my face would give me away. Guys at the station can smell trouble the way we smell a burned outlet from the driveway. I took 2 sips, then stared at my hands again. There was still a faint, sweet smell on my jacket from her shampoo. That made me mad in a quiet way. My phone buzzed. Not her. A notification from the city about plows. Then another. A group text from Station Logistics about a training update. My brain tried to latch onto it like a lifeline. Hydrant drills. Spinal packaging. Anything with rules. Then her message came through. Meredith, please don't disappear. I owe you context. I didn't open it right away. I watched the preview line sit there, like it was waiting for me to give permission for my morning to get worse. A guy a few stools down laughed at something on his screen. A waitress refilled someone's mug. Normal life. I felt like I was sitting behind glass. I finally tapped the message. Meredith, I'm not asking you to forgive anything. I'm asking you to let me explain. I've been separated for a year. The marriage is over. The paperwork isn't. I read it twice. The words were clean. Too clean. The kind you can send without shaking. I set my phone down and watched my reflection in the dark screen. I looked like I'd been on a late call. Red around the eyes. Jaw tight. That steady thing I'm good at on scene was there, but it was pointed at the wrong problem. Another buzz. Meredith. I live alone. He doesn't live with me. He calls because the kids and the house stuff still runs through me. Please. Just a conversation. Kids. She hadn't said kids. Not once. I felt a weird kind of embarrassment, like I'd missed an obvious sign on a road I drive every day. The house was too clean. The way she moved like she didn't want to leave fingerprints. The way she never talked about weekends like they belonged to her. I wanted to type something sharp. Something that would make her feel what I felt. I didn't. I left the coffee half full, paid, walked out into the cold, and sat in my truck with the engine off. The quiet in there was heavy. I could hear my own breathing in the cab. I did what I do when I don't know what to do. I went looking for facts. Her name had been in my head since that first call report. Meredith Shaw. It wasn't hard to find. A business page popped up fast. Interior design, local projects, a clean logo, photos of bright rooms and white couches no real family ever keeps clean. There was an address listed that matched the neighborhood from the smoke call. There was a contact email. A short bio with words like timeless and functional. And then there was a link. Not hidden, not secret. Just there in plain sight, like it didn't occur to her that someone might follow it. A preferred contractor section. A small list of names. One of them was Grant Shaw. His name sat there like a weight on paper. I clicked. Another page. A different business. Something property related. A phone number. A work email. Same last name, same zip code. It didn't say husband, but it didn't need to. It told me one thing I didn't want confirmed. This wasn't a random ex from years ago. This was a living, current connection. My phone buzzed again, and I didn't pick it up. I just stared at it until the screen went dark. By the time I pulled into Station 6 for shift change, the snow had started coming down in slow flakes, the kind that look harmless until you're sliding at an intersection. The bay doors were up, and the smell of diesel and wet gear hit me the second I walked in. It usually settles me. Today it just made me feel like I was walking back into the only place where I'm expected to be solid. Alyssa was at the table with a protein bar and a clipboard, scanning the board like she owned it. She didn't look up at first. "You're late," she said. "Traffic." I lied. She finally raised her eyes. She didn't ask follow-ups. Alyssa doesn't waste questions on people who are already leaking the answers. "You look like you slept in your truck," she said. I didn't. She leaned back in her chair, watching me the way you watch a stove after you turn it off, making sure it's really done. "Okay," she said. "So you're just bringing your personal mess to work. Cool." I opened my locker and started swapping into station stuff. My hands moved, but my mind kept flipping that phone over and over like a coin. Alyssa stood up and walked over, voice low so the guys on the other side of the bay wouldn't catch it. "Listen," she said. "I don't care what you do on your own time, but if you come in here distracted, it becomes everybody's problem. And if somebody notices you spiraling, it becomes station talk. Station talk turns into something bigger. You know that." I nodded once. She wasn't wrong. A bad mood can travel faster than a rig. She studied my face another second. "Is it a girl?" I gave a half shrug that wasn't a shrug. Alyssa exhaled through her nose like she already regretted asking. "If she's married, run." My head snapped up. "What?" She held my look. No surprise, no confusion, just that blunt certainty she carries around like a tool. "You heard me," she said. "If she's got a husband, you're the easiest person to blame. Even if you didn't start it. Even if you didn't know the whole story. You'll still be the guy. The department doesn't like messy." "How do you—" I started, then stopped, because she wasn't guessing. She was reading me. I didn't answer her. I just grabbed my radio, clipped it on, and forced my focus onto the board, onto the day, onto the parts of my life that had procedures. But even as the first tones dropped for a minor medical call across town, my phone sat in my pocket like a second heartbeat, and I knew Meredith was going to keep writing careful sentences until one of them landed hard enough to make me respond. Even though all I could think was that I'd already stepped into the wrong story, and the next step was going to cost me something I couldn't put back once it was gone. I didn't reply for 2 days. Not because I was trying to punish her. More because I needed to see what happened when I didn't automatically step toward the person pulling on my sleeve. Calls came in. A diabetic low that turned into a combative scene in a cramped bathroom. A wreck on Harmony where the airbags did their job, but the driver still looked like he'd been hit with a bat. The usual mix of routine and ugly. On scene, my head was clean. Off scene, the name Grant Yellowheart would pop up like a road flare. On my first off day, I ran the Poudre Trail in the cold until my lungs felt raw. Went home, Took a long shower, stood there longer than I needed to, and still didn't feel reset. Her messages stayed controlled. No flooding my phone. No guilt bombing. Meredith, if you want to be done, tell me and I'll stop. That one got me. Not because it was dramatic, but because it sounded like a person who'd practiced leaving quietly. I texted one line back. Me daylight. Public. Old Town. She replied fast. Meredith. Muggs on College? Noon. Muggs was a coffee spot that looked like it had been there forever, with wood tables and those local art prints that never change. At noon it was busy enough that nobody cared about anybody. That mattered. I wanted witnesses even if nobody was watching. I got there early and took a table near the window. Outside, people walked with their shoulders up against the cold, scarves tucked tight. The street had that small city thing where you always half expect to see someone you know. Meredith arrived exactly on time. Long coat, hair down today, not the clipped back, I'm fine look from the porch. She didn't smile like we were on a date. She approached like we had a meeting, like she was the one who'd been asked to explain an invoice. Hi, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Hi, I answered, and it sounded wrong, too soft for how hard my chest felt. We ordered coffee. The barista called names. A grinder whined. Normal noise. Meredith wrapped both hands around her cup like she needed to anchor herself. She looked at me straight. No wandering eyes. No checking her phone. I'm still married, she said. On paper. That's true. I know, I said. She nodded. I should have told you before anything happened. I watched her face, waiting for excuses. I didn't, she continued, because I didn't want to be that woman. The one with a complicated situation who asks someone to be patient without giving them the whole picture. That's exactly what you did, I said, keeping my voice low. Her mouth tightened. Yes, that honesty landed different than a polished speech would have been. She took a breath and kept going. Grant and I have 2 kids. Teenagers. They're good kids. They're not little. They're smart. They see more than people think. Kids. The word made everything heavier. It wasn't just her and him and paperwork. It was schedules, school, holidays, friends, a whole system. We haven't been a real couple in years, she said. We live separate lives. I live alone in the house you saw. He's in an apartment across town. We keep it stable. We keep the machine running. You said you lived alone, I reminded her. I do, she said quickly. I wasn't lying. I was editing. That word again. Editing. Like the truth was a photo you could crop until it looked safe. I leaned back in my chair. So why aren't you divorced? She stared into her coffee for a second, then looked up. Because it detonates things. Because the kids have friends and school, and a life that works because we've built it to work. Because a divorce turns us into a story they have to carry. You're already a story, I said. You just don't want them to hear it. Her eyes held mine. Yes, there wasn't a villain in her tone. Just tiredness. I wanted to ask if Grant knew about me. My throat felt tight around the question. Does he call you all the time? I asked instead. He calls when something needs doing, she said. A bill. A school thing. Car problem. It's not romantic. It's not that. She paused. But he has access to me. That's what you saw. I didn't like how matter-of-fact she sounded about it. Like it was weather. And the heart emoji? I couldn't stop myself. Meredith flinched. Not much. Just a small recoil, like a bruise got touched. That's old, she said. I never changed it. I didn't think. She stopped, then corrected herself. I didn't want to think. I let that sit. A couple at the next table shared a muffin. Someone laughed. The sound made me feel older than I am. You know what the problem is? I said. Meredith didn't interrupt. She waited, which told me she knew. You weren't asking if I was okay with a messy situation, I said. You were making sure I didn't get the chance to say no before you got what you wanted. Her jaw worked like she was chewing on a reply. What I wanted was to feel normal for a minute, she said. To have someone look at me like I'm not a project or a liability or a problem to manage. I didn't soften. That's still using me. Her eyes stayed steady, but her voice dropped. I know. We sat there with that between us, and for a second I could see how she handled life. She built clean lines around messy rooms and called it design. Why the chocolates? I asked. Why the note? A small, brief smile tugged at one corner of her mouth. It wasn't flirting. It looked like a person remembering something simple. It was a test, she said. I frowned. A test. Not to see if you'd call, she added. To see how you'd act if you did. If you'd show up respectful. Or if you'd act entitled. You'd be surprised how many men see a uniform and think it's an invitation to be bold. I stared at her. So you screened me. I had to, she said. And there was something lonely in it. I don't have room for someone who takes. I can barely handle the people who already take. That was the first time she sounded like she might actually need something instead of managing everything. I glanced at her phone on the table. It was face up. Silent. You never texted first, I said, because it had been bugging me since the beginning. Her fingers tightened around the cup. I don't, she admitted. I learned a long time ago that if you don't reach out, you can tell yourself you don't need anyone. Safer. The honesty made my stomach twist. It also made me angry, because it sounded like she'd rehearsed living half a life. I took a slow breath. Here's what I can do, I said. I can't be your secret. I can't do hotels like we're hiding from your own family. If this continues, it's public. Coffee shops, museums, dinner where people can see us. And you don't get to edit the truth anymore. Meredith's eyes searched my face like she was checking for traps. And if I can't do that? She asked. Then we stop, I said. And it hurt even saying it. And I walk away with my dignity intact. She nodded slowly, as if she'd expected that boundary but still needed to feel it. I can do public, she said. I can do honest. I watched her for a long second. I wanted to believe her. I also knew believing didn't make it true. Okay, I said, and the word came out like a decision, not a peace offering. Meredith let out a breath like she'd been holding it for days. She didn't reach across the table. She didn't touch my hand. She just sat there with her shoulders slightly lower, like she'd taken off a heavy bag for a moment. Outside, snow started falling again, soft and steady, and as we finished our coffee and stood to leave, I had this clear sense that I'd just drawn a line on the floor with a marker that could smear the second someone tracked water across it. And Meredith's phone stayed silent the whole time, right up until we stepped onto the sidewalk and she glanced down and her face changed a fraction, like she'd just remembered the line existed and she was already calculating how close she could get to it. Without crossing, as she tucked the phone back into her pocket and walked beside me toward the parked cars like we were two normal people heading into a normal afternoon while my head kept repeating the same thing. Public, honest, no more edits, because if I let her rewrite the terms again I'd end up standing in the wrong story with my name on the blame. We tried it my way after that. No more late-night drives to a place with a numbered door and thin curtains. No more slipping out before sunrise. We met where other people existed, where the world could accidentally notice us and nothing could be explained away as a mistake in the dark. The first time it was the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. A weekday afternoon, school hours, quieter. Meredith moved through exhibits like she was scouting a job site. Hands behind her back, eyes taking measurements. She read plaques fast, then looked at me to see if I was keeping up, like she couldn't stand the idea of being alone in the same room as someone else. I kept my hands in my pockets. I kept space between us that said we're fine without saying we're together. It wasn't a game. It was a compromise. She laughed once when I jumped at a sudden sound from one of the interactive displays. Not a big laugh. Just a quick, real one that escaped before she could catch it. Then she smoothed her face back into calm. That was the pattern. Little flashes of the person underneath. Then the guard sliding back into place like a deadbolt. After the museum, we did coffee. Then a walk through Old Town when the sidewalks were wet and people carried paper bags from shops. Then an early dinner at a place with warm lighting and a menu that tried too hard. Meredith always chose the table with her back to a wall. always angled herself so she could see the door without looking like she was watching it. I started noticing things I couldn't unsee. How she checked her phone without fully lifting it, like she didn't want anyone to catch the screen. How she kept her voice even, never too excited, never too invested. How she'd ask me questions. Good questions, then answer my answers with a smile that didn't take up much space. I'd drive home after seeing her and feel like I'd been with someone who was there and not there at the same time. One evening we went to the gardens on Spring Creek because she said she liked winter light on bare branches. It sounded like a line, but when we got there, I saw what she meant. The place was quiet, paths dusted with snow, trees making dark shapes against a pale sky. We walked side by side. Our shoulders brushed once and she didn't move away. She just kept walking like it was normal. That was the first time I thought maybe this can work. Maybe public makes it easier. Then, halfway down a path near a small greenhouse, I heard someone call my name. Moreno. My body reacted before my brain did. Shoulders tight, head turning. The same reflex I have when tones drop. It was a guy from the department, Mike Haskins, off-duty, walking with his wife and a stroller. He was in a beanie and a puffy jacket, looking like a normal civilian version of himself. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice to sound casual. Haskins grinned like he'd just found a good story. "Didn't know you came here. Thought you only left the station for the gym." His wife smiled politely. The stroller wheels squeaked over the path. I glanced at Meredith. She'd already adjusted. Shoulders relaxed. Expression open but not too open. The perfect amount of friendly. "This is Meredith," I said, because leaving her unnamed would have been worse. Meredith held out her hand. "Hi." Haskins shook it. "Nice to meet you." He looked back at me with that quick up and down that said he was filing this away. "You too?" "Just out," I said. Meredith smiled. "It's a beautiful place." Haskins nodded like he agreed, but his eyes stayed on me. Then his wife tugged the stroller forward and the moment passed, but it didn't disappear. It stayed stuck to me like smoke in fabric. When they walked away, Meredith kept her gaze on the path. "I'm sorry," I said. She looked over. "For what?" "For that," I said. "That's station ripple." Her lips pressed together. "I know. You're not bothered?" "I'm bothered," she said, honest for once. "But I'm also tired of being afraid of being seen." We walked a few more steps, and then her phone rang. She didn't reach for it right away. She let it ring twice, 3 times. I watched her jaw tighten. She pulled it out. Her eyes flicked to the screen. She didn't turn it toward me, but I didn't need to see the name to know. She didn't answer. She hit silence, not decline, like she didn't want to leave evidence. "Is it?" I started. "Yes," she said. "It's Grant." We stopped near a bench. Snow sat on the slats like frosting. "He's calling because?" I asked. Meredith stared at the trees. "Because the family machinery still runs through me," she said. Like she hated the phrase, but it was the most accurate one she had. "Schedules, bills, the kids' stuff. He calls and I fix it. That's the deal." "You could not fix it," I said. She gave me a look that was sharp but not mean. "You don't understand what happens if I don't." "Then make me understand," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, you're still connected. Not just on paper. In practice." Her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it. She just held it tighter. "I'm trying," she said quietly. "I'm trying to be here. With you. And he just gets to pull you back whenever he wants?" I asked. Her shoulders rose and fell. "It's not about want." We started walking again, slower now. That night, after I dropped her at her car, she didn't lean in for a kiss in the parking lot. She didn't even touch my arm. She just stood there with her keys in her hand and looked at me like she was deciding whether honesty was a gift or a weapon. "I need one night," she said. I frowned. "One night of what?" "Neutral," she said. "Not my house. Not your place. Somewhere private but not sneaky." She swallowed, and for a second her voice lost that polished edge. "There are parts one can't say in public." "Not yet." My stomach tightened. "A hotel." Yes, she said. But different. No pretending it's just fun. I need to tell you things without worrying someone hears me. I need to do it once properly. I stared at her, thinking of my own boundary. No more hotels. No blurred lines. You told me you could do public, I said. I can, she said quickly. I have been. But this. She lifted her hand a little, then let it drop. This is me trying to stop editing. I just need a room where I can say the ugly parts without choking on them. The snow started falling heavier, big flakes sticking to her coat collar. She didn't brush them off. I should have said no. I knew that. I felt it like a warning light. But I also saw something I hadn't seen before. A woman who was asking, not managing. Okay? I said. And I hated how much relief showed in her face, because it meant she'd been holding her breath again. And as she got into her car and closed the door, she looked at me through the glass with that careful calm returning, already assembling the details. Time, place, distance from anyone we might know, while I stood in the cold lot watching taillights fade and thinking about Haskins's grin on the garden path and the way station ripples turn into waves, and how a single room number can become evidence if someone wants it to be. The second hotel felt different the moment I stepped into it. Not because it was nicer. It wasn't. It had the same laminated evacuation plan on the back of the door, the same too bright bathroom light, the same smell that said 100 different people had slept there and left with nothing but a key card. It felt different because Meredith didn't act like she was trying to disappear. She didn't wear the long coat like armor. She showed up in jeans and a sweater, hair still a little damp like she'd rushed out after a shower. No perfume cloud. No dramatic entrance. Just a woman walking down a corridor with a small overnight bag like she was going to a dentist appointment she'd been avoiding. When I opened the door, she looked past me into the room like she was checking for cameras. Relax, I said before I could stop myself. It's just us. Her mouth twitched. I know. She stepped in. I locked the door behind her, not because I wanted to trap anything, but because the click gave my hands something to do. Meredith set her bag on the dresser and didn't sit. She walked to the window and tugged the curtain open an inch. Snow was piling against the curb outside. A couple cars sat half-buried already. You picked this place, I said. I did, she answered, still looking out. It's far enough from my side of town that I won't run into anyone I know. That sentence landed wrong. Even now, she was calculating risk. I sat on the edge of the bed, boots on the carpet. So tell me, I said, what can't you say in public? Meredith stayed by the window a few seconds longer, like she was letting the cold glass steady her. Then she turned around. It's not about him calling, she said. Not really. What is it about? I asked. She exhaled. Slow. It's about why I won't finish it. I waited. The heater kicked on with a rattling sound. Somewhere in the hall, a door shut. Meredith walked over and sat in the chair by the little desk instead of the bed. She kept space between us like it was safer to confess from a distance. I'm scared, she said. I almost laughed, because it sounded too simple for how complicated she'd made everything. But her face was serious, and there was no performance in it. Of what? I asked. Of being the bad parent, she said. Of being the one who broke the family, even if it's already broken. I leaned back, staring at the bland wall art. Meredith, you're already separated. Emotionally, she said. Logistically, we still function. Holidays, graduation planning, the kids' friends, their routines. If I make it official, it becomes real in a way they can't ignore. It becomes a line they have to pick a side of. They're teenagers, I said. They know. She shook her head quickly. They know we're not happy. They don't know the shape of it. They don't know the details. Her voice tightened. And if they find out I'm seeing someone before it's final, I'm not just the parent who left. I'm the parent who replaced. I held still. That was the first time she'd said it that plainly. She'd been trying to keep me in a category that didn't exist. So what am I? I asked. Meredith's eyes flicked up to mine, then away. You're something that happened too soon. The words hit like a shove. Not cruel. Just honest in the worst way. You could have not let it happen, I said. I could have, she agreed, and her throat moved like she swallowed something sharp. But I wanted it. I wanted you. That should have felt good. Didn't. Not like this. I stood up and walked to the bathroom, then back, because I didn't know where to put my energy. My brain wanted to fix something. There was nothing to fix. So you keep it unofficial, I said. And you keep me where? Meredith's fingers twisted together in her lap. I wasn't trying to make you a secret forever. Just until it's convenient, I said before I could soften it. She winced. Until it's safe. For who? I asked. She looked up fast. For my kids. And for you, I said. So you can tell yourself you didn't do anything wrong. Silence. That was answer enough. The heater clicked again. The room had that too quiet feeling you get after a loud call when everyone stops moving and realizes how close it was. Meredith's voice dropped. Grant isn't a monster, she said. He's tired. He's been tired for years. We both have. I stared at her. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to know I'm not running from a villain, she said. I'm running from guilt. From how it will look. From how it will feel when my kids look at me differently. I sat back down, slower. And does he know about me? I asked. Meredith hesitated. It was small, but it was there. What does that mean? I asked, my voice flat now. He knows I met someone, she said. My stomach tightened. Met. I didn't give him details, she added quickly. I didn't give him a name. So you told him enough to manage him? I said, and I heard my own bitterness, which made me hate the sound of myself. Meredith's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She didn't let anything spill. He asked me if I was happy, she said quietly, and I didn't know what to say. I rubbed a hand over my face. So he calls you. He still has access. The kids are the reason, the excuse, the anchor. And I'm what, the quiet part you don't say out loud? Her voice went sharper. That's not fair. I looked at her. You're right. It's not fair. I nodded slowly. To me. She flinched again, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. And now that it was out loud, she couldn't hide from it. I didn't ask you to take the risk, she said. You did, I said. Maybe not with those words, but you did. Her hands dropped to her sides, palms open, like surrender. I don't know how to do this cleanly. I stared at her. Then don't do it. She blinked. What? If you can't do it clean, I said, then don't pull someone else into it. Meredith's jaw tightened. So you're leaving? I held her gaze. I don't know, I admitted, and it was the first truly honest thing I'd said in the room. I like you, more than I should, but I can't be the guy you hide until you decide you're ready to stand in your own life. Her shoulders slumped a fraction. I'm trying. I believe you, I said, and that's part of the problem. For a second, the air between us felt like it might soften into something else. Something close. Something that would make it easier to ignore the mess for one more night. Meredith stood up and took a step toward me. Then she stopped, like she caught herself before she crossed a line. She reached down and picked up her phone from the desk. It lit up. A message preview from Grant. Not a call this time. A text. I didn't see the whole thing. Just the first few words. Can you talk? It's about. Meredith's thumb hovered over the screen like she could choose which world to live in. Her voice was quiet. See? I nodded. Yeah. She looked up at me, and for the first time she seemed older than her own careful image, like the weight of managing everyone had finally bruised her. I can't shut it off, she said. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and didn't even think about whether I was being dramatic. I just knew if I stayed, I'd end up back in bed, and in the morning I'd feel worse because it would mean my boundary was a suggestion, not a line. Meredith didn't stop me. She didn't beg. She just watched, breathing shallow again, like room 214 had come back around and wrapped itself over us. At the door, I paused with my hand on the knob. I'm going to leave early, I said. She nodded once. Okay. I opened the door. Cold hallway air rushed in. The carpet outside looked the same as inside. but it felt like freedom anyway. As I stepped out, Meredith's phone buzzed again behind me, and I didn't turn around to see if she answered, because I already knew the pattern. She would hold it, weigh it, and choose the option that kept her life stable, even if stability meant I was the part she could erase later. And walking toward the elevator, I felt something settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not rage, just a steady decision forming around one thought I couldn't shake anymore. If I wanted anything clean in this, the only clean move left might be to talk to the one person she kept orbiting even when she swore the marriage was dead. I didn't call Meredith before I did it. If I did, she'd talk me out of it, or she'd reshape it into something that protected her. I wasn't doing this to punish her. I was doing it because I was tired of being the only person in the room who didn't know the rules. I used the contractor page she'd left online like an open door. One business number led to an office voicemail. That led to a work email. I kept my message short and boring on purpose. Hi Grant. My name is Jake Moreno. I think we have a shared situation. I'd like to talk in person, respectfully. Coffee. Anywhere you pick. I hit send and immediately felt stupid. Like I'd just walked into traffic and hoped the cars would stop because I'd asked nicely. 2 hours later, a reply came in. Tomorrow. 9:30. Bean cycle. I'll be there. No questions. No threats. Just a time and a place. That calm was worse than anger would have been. Anger would have meant he was the villain and I was the guy with the clean conscience. The next morning, it was cold enough that the inside of my nose burned when I stepped outside. I got to Bean cycle early and parked where I could see the entrance. I watched people go in and out carrying cups, shoulders hunched, faces half hidden by scarves. At 9:28, a dark SUV pulled into the lot and backed in like the driver did it the same way every day. Grant stepped out. I expected older. Not by a lot. I expected a different kind of man. Someone bigger. Someone who filled space. Grant was average height, average build, dressed like he'd come from work. Button-down shirt under a winter jacket, jeans, clean boots. His hair was starting to thin at the temples. He moved like someone who'd been tired for a long time but still kept appointments. He didn't scan the parking lot like he was hunting. He just walked straight in. When he saw me, he didn't smile, but he nodded once. Like this was a meeting he didn't want but had decided to handle. Jake? He asked. Yeah, I said, standing up. Grant. We shook hands. His grip wasn't aggressive. It was firm and quick. Businesslike. He ordered coffee first. I noticed he paid without looking at the price. He waited for me to order, then chose a table near the wall, same as Meredith always did. Back protected. Door in view. I sat across from him and realized my heart was beating harder than it ever does on calls. Grant set his cup down carefully, like he didn't trust his hands. So, he said, this is about Meredith. Yeah, I said. You know she's been seeing someone. He didn't flinch. He didn't pretend he didn't. She told me she met someone, he said. That was the language. Met. I nodded. That's the language she likes. A faint, tired smile touched his face, like he didn't enjoy it but recognized it. She's a very managed, he said. I stared at him. Is that your polite way of saying she lies? Grant looked down into his coffee, then back up. She edits, he said. And I almost laughed because it was the same word she used, like it was a family trait. She didn't tell me you were still married, I said. I'm not surprised, Grant replied. She's terrified of being the person who causes damage. She's causing it anyway, I said. Grant didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been living with that fact for years. Are you two actually separated? I asked. Or is this one of those situations where separated means whatever helps her sleep? Grant's eyes stayed on me, steady. We live apart, he said. We've been apart in every way that matters for a long time. We kept it legal because of the kids and the house and the way everything is tied together. Do the kids know? I asked. They know we're not happy, he said. They don't know details. They're not stupid, but they also don't want to know. They want the machine to keep running. Meredith keeps it running. There it was again. The machine. The family machinery. Hearing him say it made it feel less like Meredith's excuse and more like an actual job she'd been doing. "So what are you?" I asked him. "A roommate that lives somewhere else?" Grant let out a breath through his nose. "I'm the guy who signed papers with her when we thought we were building something," he said. "And now I'm the guy who shares a calendar and a bank app and parent stuff. That's the honest version." I stared at my cup. The table had little scratches in the wood. Normal scratches. Normal place. "Did you want to fix it?" I asked. Grant's eyes narrowed. Not in anger, more in thought. "If you asked me 5 years ago, yes," he said. "If you asked me 2 years ago, I don't know. Now?" He shrugged slightly. "Now I mostly want quiet. I want the kids to be okay. I want Meredith to stop acting like everything is her fault and her responsibility." That last part landed hard. He wasn't trying to win her back. He sounded like someone who still cared about her as a person, even if he couldn't live with her anymore. I leaned forward. "Then why the heart next to your name?" I asked before I could stop myself. Grant blinked once. Then a real smile showed up for the first time. Not warm, more like amused. "That's her," he said. "She doesn't change things like that. It feels like admitting something ended. So she keeps old labels until they fade on their own." I sat back. That fit too well. It made me feel like I'd been arguing with the wrong part of the problem. Grant took a sip, set the cup down again. "Are you angry at me?" I asked him. He looked at me a long second. "Not really," he said. "I don't know you. You didn't sign up for this. You're standing here because you want the truth." "That doesn't make me innocent," I said. Grant's jaw tightened, then relaxed. "It makes you human," he said. "And it makes you the easiest person to blame if this turns into a story." That sounded like Alyssa's warning, just spoken softer. I nodded. "So what does Meredith want?" I asked. Grant looked out the window at the snow for a second, like he was choosing his words. "She wants to feel alive without paying for it," he said. "She wants to keep her role as the steady parent and still have something that's hers." "And what do you want?" I asked. Grant's eyes came back to mine. "I want her to stop hiding," he said. "Because hiding turns everything into a mess. It makes everybody suspicious. The kids feel it. I feel it. And now you feel it." He paused, then added, "She's not easy to know, but she's worth knowing." That sentence hit me in the gut, because it wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a compliment to her from the one person who had the most reason to trash her. It made the whole thing worse, because it removed the comfort of a simple villain. I swallowed. "Does she know I'm here?" I asked. Grant shook his head. "No." I nodded slowly. "She'll find out." "She will," he said. "And she'll be upset. Not because you spoke to me, because you moved without her controlling it." I stared at my hands, then back at him. "If you were me," I asked, "what would you do?" Grant didn't answer fast. He looked tired in a way that felt familiar, like a guy at the end of a long shift who still has paperwork to finish. "If you stay," he said, "you need boundaries that don't bend. And you need her to stop pretending she can keep 2 lives separate. If she can't do that, you walk. Not as a punishment, as a rule." I nodded because it was what I'd been trying to do already. Grant stood up first. He slid his chair in quietly, no scrape. "I'm not going to call her and make this bigger," he said. "I'm not going to do anything dramatic. I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing, taking care of the kids, showing up." I stood too, feeling heavier than when I'd walked in. "Thanks for meeting me," I said. Grant held my gaze. "I'm sorry you got pulled into it," he said, and I believed he meant it. We shook hands again, and when he walked out into the snow, he didn't look back. I sat down for another minute, staring at my untouched coffee, realizing that the conversation I thought would make me feel better had done the opposite. It proved nobody was a monster, just people doing math with their own fear and calling it love. And when my phone buzzed in my pocket as if on cue, I didn't have to look at the screen to know Meredith had finally noticed a piece of her story moved without her permission. My phone buzzed again as I walked to my truck, and when I finally looked, it was Meredith. "Meredith, what did you do?" "No question mark. Just that." I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then put it face down on the passenger seat like I was the one trying to hide something. I drove with both hands locked on the wheel, mind replaying Grant's calm voice, the way he'd said she was worth knowing, like he was handing me a problem he'd already carried too long.